Hello my yarny friends, I'm Sara Sach and welcome to my crochet channel. Today is Friday Fun Day. Well, we're doing something a little bit different today because we've been doing our Winter Mystery Crochet Along this week. We did step 1 on Monday, which was the materials list, and we did the body of our big squishy owl. Isn't that huge? I just love it. All right, step 2 we did on Wednesday, which was the owl's wings, his eyes, and the beak. Yesterday on Thursday, we did the velvet Santa hat. Isn't that adorable? And just a note, this will fit a newborn baby or American Girl doll or any of your stuffed animals as well. It's a beautiful velvet Santa hat. All right, so today we're going to be doing step number 4, and we're going to be adding all these pieces to our big squishy Santa owl. Once we get all those pieces attached, you'll notice there aren't any embellishments. And so I have this container here filled with lots of fun embellishments, and I'll show you and tell you about all the fun things that you can add to your big squishy Santa owl and make it personal. All right, so let's get started. So here are all our pieces. We made our beak and our eyes, and we left long tails of yarn for sewing those onto our face. We did the same thing with our wings. We left a long strand of yarn so we can sew those on. The only one we did not do that with is our velvet hat. Now we're going to be adding a little bit of stuffing to the inside of the hat, and then we're going to use a medium weight number 4 white to sew it on. And I'm choosing to use the acrylic yarn opposed to the velvet, as I think it's going to sit better on the hat against the owl. And it's going to be a little bit sturdier than using the velvet yarn to sew it on. So if you made your hat different colors, just match an acrylic medium weight number 4 yarn to the band of your hat, because we're going to sew that onto the owl, and then we can use the acrylic yarn to attach that, okay? And then you'll notice I have 2 needles. We're going to be using this big needle with the big eye for the wings. We'll use the smaller needle for the other 3. The 2 eyes, the beak, and the hat. All right, and we'll probably use that little one to attach some buttons too. Oh, and don't forget, you're going to need your scissors and a little handful of stuffing if you want to put some in your owl hat. I have sewn on the first wing. We only stitch the top section until we get to that little point. We line it up with the top here and sew it here. All right. I'm going to show you how to do that on this other side. Whoops. No problem. Okay. So I've got my other wing here. I've threaded it on. And just so that you know, there is not a front and a back. You just want to line this up with the side of your owl. And we're going to flip it forward. Bring it up here. And we're going to first go down. And what I do is I make just some whip stitches going through just like this. Okay, here is that point there where our wing makes a point. I'm going to go right in that point. Whoops. Guess I better rethread my needle. There we go. All right. I'm going to make a second stitch right in that point so it's secure. And then I'm just going to work my way right back up that wing so it's nice and secure. And when it gets played with, because you know the kiddos are probably going to pull on those wings. That's just what the kiddos do. All right, now we're back up to the top. And I like to make an extra stitch at the top so it's secure. And then we're just going to go down in, swirl around some of that fiber inside, and just bring it up. And it might be hard to get through some of that fiber. All right, we're going to bring it up, we're going to pull it a little bit, and we're going to make a knot. And with this big stuff, I usually make a second one. All right, so I've got a knot there. We'll clip right up close to that knot. We'll pull that inside. And so now we have 2 wings. Nice, floppy, fun wings. Make sure you sew the other one on the other side. So the next thing we're going to do is add the beak. And where we're going to add the beak is in the center, about halfway on that stripe. Okay, now if you want to pin this, sometimes I'll take my other needle that I'm not using and just go ahead and pin that in place. If not, my beak sometimes ends up crooked on different things that I've done. All right, and so what we're going to do is we're going to go along this edge, and I'm going to go forward a couple of stitches, and then I'll come back to the stitch behind. When you're stitching on a thicker fabric like this, it kind of helps to do what I think they call those back stitches. I'm going to take that out because it's kind of in my way. Alrighty, so I'm going to go back and then forward. I want to make sure that edge of that beak is nice and pointed. Sewing pieces on when you're making something is my least favorite thing to do in crochet. I would rather sew ends in or weave ends in any day than sew on pieces because I'm always afraid they're going to be crooked. All right, I'm going to come up here because I want to go right in that point because we want the bottom of that point of our beak to be nice and pointy. All right, I'm going to turn this a little bit so I can work up this side. See how I'm going forward and then I'm coming back and going forward. There we go. All right, now I'm going to look at this and make sure I've got the same tight corner there. I want my beak to look nice and neat. And again, I want it to be sturdy so the kiddos can play with it. All right, so I've made sort of big stitches at this point around my beak. And I have extra yarn left, and so I'm just going to go ahead and go around it again. And that's going to make it stay extra secure. And I'm not doing any back stitches this time. This is just extra stitches going around, just making sure that my beak is going to stay put. I mean, again, I want my grandkids to be able to throw this around the room and play with it and have fun. Although my dogs will probably just lay on it. Make sure that beak's nice and pointed down there. All right, so I like how it looks. I'm going to swirl this around and I'm going to try to go to the back of my owl. So I'm going to turn this over, pull it up here, and we're going to do that same thing. We're going to tie a knot and then tie a second knot right at that same knot. Cut that right at that knot, and then we'll sort of pull that out and grab that needle so I don't lose it. And we'll turn her over, And sometimes it pulls a little when you make that knot. So there is my owl beak. So I've already sewn on one of the owl eyes, and I'm going to sew the other one on, and we're going to put them right next to the beak, right on that edge of the green, and also so that it covers maybe just a little bit of the corner of the beak so that they're nice and even. Again, if you want to pin this down, you can. And so I've already threaded my needle with the long strand of yarn, and we're going to do the same thing we did around here, around the eye. We're going to go forward and then come back a stitch. Make sure you get underneath that fabric of the owl head there. And we're going around those stitches. Because the first row, I call that basting it on. Even though we are stitching, you know, to hold it on, it also helps us make sure it's placed in the right place, because if it's not, we can always move it. All right, I'm going to turn this just a little so I can go around this side. I want to make sure it looks like the one over here on that beak. Make sure I'm getting some fabric here. There we go. This yarn on this eye looks like I didn't leave as much as the other one. So when I do that second row, I'll probably have to add a little bit more yarn. That's okay. I'm ready. I've got some white yarn all ready. Now you could have sewn these eyes on before we stuffed it and everything, but I like to do it this way because when you're sewing on the pieces, you're also going through some of those fibers of the stuffing, and that's going to help it stay in place as well. All right, so I've got the first row on my second eye done, and I'm going to add some more yarn to this and do a second row. All right, so I sewed another row around the eye, and I added the little eye glint on this side, or sparkle, whatever you want to call it. But once you finish stitching around the eye, you go in and you come up in the center of the eye. And we're making this for two reasons. One, it gives it a little bit of personality, of course, to have those little eye glints, but also it helps hold the center of the eye down. And so we're just going to go back in and make a couple of stitches, and I did 3 of them like that. And that center one, I like to try to get between those first 2, and then we'll go to the back and tie that knot. I think it just gives it a little bit of personality, kind of wakes up the owl. All right, I'm making that knot. We'll clip that and then push that into the back of the owl. All right, let's take a look at our owl. All right, there's his eyes, his beak, and his wings. Now we just need to add his hat. All right, let's add our pretty little velvet hat. Now, I put just a tiny bit of stuffing in it. Not very much, and I put it right around the center. I don't stuff it at the top, okay? So just a little bit, like right in there, maybe a little bit more. And I only put it in the red portion because we're going to be sewing the white portion onto our owl. All right? All right, let me scoot this down. I am going to take my big needle for placement. And what I want to do is set it right in the middle between my owl ears. All right, and so I'm going to take my needle and just go ahead and pin that in place. And then I'm going to turn it over. I've got my medium weight number 4 yarn on my needle. And I'm going to place it just like that. And we're going to go in these single crochet stitches. And I'm going to leave a tail out. And we're going to go in and out. And we're going to stitch in those single crochet stitches. And we're going to go in and out. And this first row again is our basting row. Okay? So I only sewed half back here because we want to end up back in the back. So I'm going to turn this over. And we're going to go along here, going in and out. Make sure you get in those stitches. Keep sliding down on me. Sorry about that. There we go. And you want to eyeball it as you go, making sure it's where you want it and that it's staying centered in the center of our owl's head. And remember, this first row is our basting row. So if you don't like where it ended up or it's not far enough over one side or the other, you can always move it. Alrighty, so now I'm going to go here and turn back to the back and do the other side. All right, so now I'm back where I started. All right, I'm going to take a look at it, see if it's centered the way that I like. All right, now we can do that second row. And what I do before I do the second row is I do a little stay knot right here. That way that doesn't come out when I'm going around again, okay? And this time we want to do a little bit more whip stitching, so we're going to go like this. Whoops, don't want to grab that loop. Make sure we're getting in the top of the owl's head and in the stitches. Because again, if you're making this for your grandkids to play with or your kiddos to play with, you want them to be able to have fun without worrying about it coming apart. And you also want it to be a cute decoration. All right, so we've done that part. We're going to come back over to the front, and I'm going to do those whip stitches across the front, making sure that hat is getting attached securely. I'm going in the owl head and around that hat, or the brim of the hat, I should say. All right, that's nice and secure. We're going to turn it over and we'll finish this last side. Again, making sure we're going through the head of our owl. It's okay. He won't feel a thing. He's tough. All righty, so now we're back over where we started. Take our needle out. Oh, don't want to pull too tightly. There we go. nice and tight. Make sure that needle is, or that knot is nice and secure. And we'll just push that inside the head where you don't see it. And we'll turn it over. I'm so loving this. And now we have just a little bit of stuffing in there, and that hat can kind of droop forward if you want, or not. I love it so much. All right, so now we need just a little bit of embellishments to make it personal. It's super fun to personalize a gift like our squishy owl to the person that you're going to make it for. So I have some Christmas embellishments in here. I have some different colored jingle bells. I've got some different Christmas ribbons. If you go to Hobby Lobby right now, their Christmas is 60% off, and I got those super inexpensive. I've also got some beads. You could add eyes. And then there's lots of different Christmas buttons, even lights that you could add. And so there are a lot of fun things that you can do. I'm going to add a button to the hat, and I'm going to add a ribbon to the neck, and then maybe some jingle bells on the hat as well, or maybe on the wings. I added this sparkly polka dot ribbon with this fun sparkle red button. I added a reindeer button to my hat, and then I also added a red jingle bell to each of my owl's wings. I just love how he turned out. So I have finished embellishing my Santa owl. I added a little reindeer button to the hat. I added a pretty Christmas red button with some sparkle polka dot ribbon to the front, and then I added a red jingle bell to each of his wings. I love how my Santa owl squishy turned out, and he will be the star of my Christmas decorations, and I think my grandkids are going to have a lot of fun playing with him. Well, that's all I've got for you this week, and I'll see you next Friday for Friday Fun Day with Sara.